welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, sponsored by Motivate Training and Management. This is a podcast where we talk to drivers and industry experts to help you maximise your performances on and off the track. Let's get started with today's show.
Broc Feeney is a young man in a serious hurry. It's Matt Payne here, and you're listening to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, powered by Motivate Training. At the age of 18, Feeny will enter his second Bathurst 1000 in October as the Super Cheap Auto wildcard, with Bathurst winner and Supercars legend Russell Ingall alongside. His rise from karts through Toyota 86s to being Super 3 champion and now in the 888 Super 2 squad has been meteoric. Although he grew up around the sport, Broc's forged his own pathway through lessons learned by watching some of the greats. Away from the track, Broc was training in a mechanical apprenticeship and work on his own race cars to bring more knowledge to the race team. He's also gone from being the student of Paul Morris at Norwell Motorplex to the teacher with some young kids making their transition into motorsport careers. In this podcast, he talks about many of his lessons throughout his young motorsport career to date, and also the importance of looking after sponsors. Particularly how Boost Mobile planting a small seed led to Broc sitting on the Bathurst grid alongside James Courtney the weekend of his 18th birthday. Time to start the engine, kick back and enjoy the latest ride on the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, powered by Motivate Training.
For Broc Feeney, the youngster from Carrara on the Gold Coast. Congratulations to Broc, 15 years of age, youngest ever race winner in the Toyota 86 Racing Series.
Championship goes the way of the 16-year-old. Broc Feeney is the champion of 2019. The most consistent kid in the paddock is also the youngest. The exit.
Scott Pye, 2012 Homebush, last win in Super 2 for 888. They've had a bunch of drivers, including Casey Stoner since then, but now it's Broc Feeney.
Great to have this young fella with us on the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, powered by Motivate Training this week. Broc Feeney, how's it going, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. It's been fantastic to get you on the podcast and tell your story. A young man that's in a bit of a hurry, it would seem, in various parts of motorsport. It's been a busy year so far.
Yeah, it has been quite busy. I suppose it's been busy in terms of, driving a lot, probably a few different cars. But, my main focus this year, the Super 2 series, we haven't even had our second round. So it's been 3 months out of the seat in that car. We had a test day only the other day and Winton's only next week. So it's certainly starting to get pretty busy now.
No, it's great. I mean, it certainly hasn't been a quiet 3 months, it must be said. There's been a bit happen. I mean, number one thing, of course, which we will touch on later, is the Bathurst 1000 start with Super Cheap Auto and Russell Ingall, which is huge. Obviously doing some testing, a bit of Excel racing. And then most recently, you jumped behind the wheel of an AMG GT3 with Prince Jeffrey. How was that?
Yeah, it was pretty unreal, Always wanted to drive a GT3. Probably didn't expect it to come for me so young. It was an awesome experience. Obviously, Taylor Bend's a pretty good track for GT3s, basically perfectly built for him. So, it was an awesome experience. Like a little bucket list tick for me to drive a GT3 car. So, it was good. It's just, for me, I've just been trying to get as many miles as I can, and to be able to jump into a car like that, with Prince Jeffrey, I've been helping so much while he's been out in Australia. So I've been doing a lot of coaching with him, which has been great. So it's like teaming up with a good mate of mine. So it was good fun.
That's good. And hanging out with princes, that's not a bad weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool. And, being in 888 as well, we've come to know each other quite well. And, any time I can spend, with people in 888 or, himself, it's been great for me. So a lot of new faces this year, but it's been awesome.
Yeah, it's been a pretty meteoric rise since you left go-karts, about 3 years ago. Basically coming through the Toyota 86 series, then into Super 3, Super 2. We sort of call it Super 2 last year, and then staying in Super 2 this year. When I refer to last year, of course, everything under COVID was cut right back. So that's what I mean. And now you're in at 888 with backing of Boost Mobile and Super Cheap Auto.
Yeah, it's, looking back on it, it's been a pretty crazy few years for me. It's only just over 3 years since I started racing cars, and I've already had a Bathurst 1000 start, about to go into my second Bathurst 1000 as the leading driver. So, things have been pretty crazy in the last few years, especially, it was only a few years ago I was racing go-karts. So it's been awesome for me. Feel like I've achieved and done so much for my age. So I'm, pretty happy with that and proud of, what not just myself, but the team and my family around me have been able to do in such a short time.
Yeah, because we must remind people that you are only 18. You only turned 18 on Bathurst weekend last year in October. It's remarkable to think. It almost feels like you've been around forever. Well, I've certainly been watching you forever since you started in go-karts. And the big announcement just over a month ago was that you'll be heading to Bathurst with Russell Ingall, one of the all-time greats, and Super Cheap Auto. When did they first approach you to tell you that Russell may be or was going to be your co-driver, and how did you react to that?
Yeah, it was pretty funny when we sat down with RD, and I sort of knew a little bit earlier on that the Super Cheap wildcard looked like happening, and that I was going to be a part of that. And then it was, finding a secondary driver. And when he told me it was Russell, I've got such a great relationship with Russell, and his family with mine over many years, even before I was born, actually. So there's a great relationship there. And, I was very surprised, to say the least, when he said that Russell was going to be driving. He didn't say the last name. He said, "Oh, yeah, Russell will be driving with you at Bathurst." I'm like, "Russell?
Russell who?"
And he's like, "Yeah, Russell Ingall." I'm like, "Oh, my God."
Yeah.
It was a big shock to me. But, it's awesome to be, pairing up with him, Super Cheap Auto and 888 to tackle my second 1000. Certainly very excited for it.
Yeah, Russell, I mean, your dad goes way back with him in the motorbike days and supported him through. So it's quite a remarkable thing. You'll be the oldest, youngest driver combination in the history of the great race. I mean, Russell's late 50s now. You're 18, will be 19 by the time they're almost 19, actually, before the race kicks off. So, it's an incredible story. And I think that when I first heard it, I was excited about it because I thought this just works.
Yeah, exactly. It's, that relationship that we do have going back in the past is only going to help us, going into the race as well. So there's, we both know what we got to do going into the weekend, and it's not like I'm not trying to help him. Like, we're both trying to help each other as much as we can before we get to that race to make sure we do the best result. So, it's awesome to pair up with Russell, and certainly very excited for the opportunity and to represent, Super Cheap Auto and be driving a car that's going to be capable of winning the race. It's pretty exciting for myself and for Russell as well. Yeah,
for sure. And behind the scenes, you're going to have Paul Morris in your corner, also your dad in the corner calling the shots and rolling. So pretty formidable operation as you head to the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. It's awesome for me, coming into 888 this year. Already feel so a part of the family, and, to have this opportunity come up so soon and, moving into a new team's awesome. So there's some great people around us. Obviously, Paul's going to have a massive input into it. With myself and Russell, he's sort of helped out and looked after over the years. So that's going to be great. And obviously, Roland will be floating around. But, it's certainly going to be an exciting weekend for us. And, just being surrounded by great people is probably the best thing for us.
Yeah, and I can tell you that Super Cheap Auto are super excited. I was speaking to Benjamin with another hat on the other day, and they cannot wait to get up to the mountain and get stuck into it. So I think it's a great program. It's going to be fascinating to keep an eye on that over the next 6 months. On the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, we tend to go off the track a little bit and find out a little bit more about the person and their journey through the sport and how they got to where they've got to. I guess you were literally born into it on both sides, from both sides with your parents. Both of your parents were heavily involved in the sport.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe a lot of people don't realise, I'm so young, but I've literally been involved in racing, even before I remember, actually. I started racing motorbikes at the age of 3. So racing certainly not something new for me. It's literally been my whole life. Like, as you sort of say that in a term, but like, no joke, it's literally been my whole life. I've been involved around racing, and my dad was a professional motorbike rider. That was his job, and he went into distributing and importing, motorcycles in Australia. Mum and Dad ironically met at a racetrack. A big surprise there. So, motorsport's well and truly in my DNA. And just growing up, been around been so fortunate to grow up around, world champions and legends of, motorcycle racing, just of so many sports, which I've been so lucky to, grow up around and sort of pick their brain over the years. So I think being involved with racing from such a young age and the people that I've been able to hang around with and feed off has certainly helped me progress in my career.
Yeah, your dad, he's probably one of the best known motorcycle importers, not just in Australia, but certainly around the world. I think at one stage he was the biggest dealer of Husqvarna anywhere in the world by volume. Also dealt with the likes of Ducati, was it Cagiva and MV Agusta at the time as well?
Yeah, so, started off with the Kawasaki dealership up here on the Gold Coast, and then eventually ended up importing, distributing Cagiva, MV Agusta and Husqvarna. By the end, it was just the Husqvarna motorcycle. So basically from as far as I can remember, it was just Husqvarna. And he ran a race team in enduro and motocross at the start. So every weekend, basically, I was going to a racetrack and, hanging out with the team. And I was probably that little kid that annoyed everyone running around and hanging out with all the riders and that. So, I got pretty cool memories of hanging out with guys that were coming over from Europe and staying at home. And these are guys that, won X Games and were world champions in the sport. So it was pretty cool, just being this little kid annoying, people with such high calipers. So, it's been pretty fortunate, grew up around such great people.
Yeah, Dario friend Kitty tells a funny story about your dad on Rusty's podcast when he actually got a bike from your dad and fell off. I think he broke his back or something like that. And then your dad's retort to it when I brought it up with him was like, well, I've never had a problem in my life, so I don't know what he was doing wrong. But your mum, Sue, she was in the promotional side, is that right, with like Rothmans and so on?
Yeah, so she ran all the promotion and all the promo girls was it Winfield back in the day? Winfield back in the day. So she was, basically the Supercar rounds, all the NRL stuff and all that. So, she was sort of the head of all the promo chicks and all that, which was, how they ended up meeting at a racetrack. So, it's pretty cool. This family, it's so involved in racing and, growing up and, exactly what I want to do. And I suppose you look back at the history of the family and it exactly suits. So, it's pretty cool to have parents that are, so supportive and understand what it takes in racing.
Yeah, 100%. While we're at it, we better give your brother Lockie a shout out too. He's doing an amazing job in the blockchain world with his company, Labris. He'd be probably Australia's leading blockchain fintech company in Australia, I think, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he is. So, he's 4 years older than me and, to be honest, it would have been interesting to see if he carried on. We both started racing motorbikes young. He was the same age as Remy Gardner and used to race Remy in Australia and dirt track and all that. So very good on a dirt bike he was. And even when we started karting, he was very good. And even when we go to high karts now, I don't like to say it, but he actually sometimes even beats me, which is, a bit hard for me to take. But he's very talented in motorsport as well. He was very smart, probably a little bit different to me in brain. So I love going to, love schools and into his IT and started his own company a few years back. And it's one of the biggest blockchain developers in Australia. So it's awesome, to have a brother as well who's so supportive of it and lets me do my thing. Obviously we spent a lot of time away from home, when he was sort of finishing school and stuff like that. So it's awesome to celebrate, another family member who's doing so well, even if it's not probably publicised as much as I am. He's doing any bit as good as I am, probably even a little bit better. So, it's pretty cool to have that.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned there the transition from motorbikes, where you won a couple of Australian championships as a very young kid, moving from 2 wheels to 4. What took you from motorbikes to go-karts?
It was when I was about 9 years old. We went on a holiday to Thailand. We're in Phuket, staying there for a bit. And me and Lockie, we went to the whole family, we went to the high karts and we sort of fell in love with it pretty quick. I suppose in motorsport, everyone sort of loves going and jumping in a go-kart and high karts and running into each other. And we basically did that on every day of our holiday. And when we got back to Australia, one of our mates from motorbikes was friends with Kenny, who owned Chaos Karting back in the day, and there was a come and try day up at Ipswich. So we went up there, had to go on a go-kart, loved it. And we bought a couple of karts, and to be honest, they sat in the shed for about 6 months, and we pressed on with the motorbikes. And then we went out to McDowan's one day, had a rip around out there, and then there was one race in Gympie at the start of 2012, and that was the first race, and basically never looked back on, I look back on motorbikes a lot all the time, but never raced a motorbike ever again. So, still absolutely love my motorbikes. Probably my favourite sport to watch is motorbike racing, but got to be pretty careful riding them these days. I don't want to do it mid-season and hurt myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny story. An interesting story, in fact. Like, both you and Jack Doohan came through together. Like, you mirrored each other's karting careers, raced against each other with the fiercest of competitors for a number of years, and have now gone on. Obviously, Jack over in Europe, you here in Australia, on four wheels.
Yeah, exactly. So, me and Jack grew up as great mates, as young kids, even before we started racing each other. And it's probably one of the things that half did get me into it. So we'd go down and watch Jack. I think I remember first go-kart meeting was going to watch Jack at the Lismore Young Guns in probably 2011. And we went and watched him there, and was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And he was sponsored by Monster at the time. I'm like, oh, how cool is this? My mate, how cool is he? He's sponsored by Monster and racing go-karts. And so, we became probably best mates throughout those probably 5-6 years period where we were intensified in a battle basically every weekend we went racing. So, it's so good to see him kicking goals over in Europe. Last year was quite tough for him, and, we spent a bit of time over here in the off season together, and, it's just great to see him getting such good results, in the first round this year. So, our paths are going opposite ways, but, I think we're both going quite well in where we're at.
But mentioning Monster, ironically, he's now part of the Red Bull family, and you're now part of the Red Bull family as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. For me, it's like a dream come true. You've been partnered with one of the biggest sponsoring companies in the world that, you look at, like, for me, I'd look at Red Bull athletes and be like, oh, they're like proper, you know what I mean? They're like the best in their sport in the world. And to be associated with them, it's just unreal. And for this year, it came a bit of a surprise when I got told that Red Bull were going to jump on board. And it's just a great opportunity for me.
You did try and get Bayless and Crumpy's son across to four wheels as well. That didn't work out so well. They're back on two wheels, doing pretty good also.
Yeah, exactly. We all grew up, all of us were sort of in a little, not a group together, but we're all really good mates. So Ollie, I think, started racing about the same time as me in go-karts. I don't think we ever raced each other. I actually ended up using his engine when I won the Lismore Young Guns in my first year. I remember that. He gave us his engine. I think that's when he was going to motorbikes. And then, Seth, me and him were best mates. We went through school together and everything. So he started karting for a little bit and then switched and has gone to motorbikes. And in a few years has gone from just a kid who's just jumped on a motorbike to became second in the British Superbike 300s last year. So he's absolutely kicking goals over in England, and Ollie's kicking goals out here in Australia. Jack's killing it over in Europe. So it's pretty cool to see it's pretty cool to see how good all of our mates are going, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I see old man Crumpy. He's jumped back, put the leg over again, and kicked off his run with the Ipswich, which is in British Speedway, which is unbelievable. Like, he's mid-40s, and I think he was actually the highest scorer at their opening night meeting the other night. So, bloody unbelievable. But to go further back, part of your school before you left go-karts to go into car racing, you were developing your off-track skills with an apprenticeship, and you're doing a TAFE alongside your schooling. Can you talk about that program?
Yes, I think at the end of year 9, start of year 10, I started doing a mechanical apprenticeship. So that was the year in year 10 I moved into the car racing. So we sort of went to the school because I was basically missing the last 2 days of every week, like Thursday or Friday. A lot, especially when we were karting. You're away on testing a lot and racing a lot. And we sort of went to the school and they mentioned about this school-based apprenticeship. So we sat down with them and went through it, and there was a mechanical apprenticeship available, and which I was able to do at Dad's work when he still had the go-kart business. And this was when we first started getting into cars. So I was able to work under one of the guys that worked for Dad, Vic, and it sort of suited him perfect because it was when we started getting the 86. So, myself, Vic and Johnny were able to work on the 86 together. We ran it ourselves that year. So, it was pretty cool for me just to start to get a little bit of an understanding of probably what the car does. Certainly now my knowledge is way more than it was back then. And I then transitioned into working at Norwell, which was, for when I raced Super 3. So, it's been pretty cool, just to be able to learn a little bit more about the car and, have that association with TAFE was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they utilised you quite a bit, especially in the 86 year, I guess as a bit of a poster boy for their vocational education program and so on. And obviously you've gone on now, you've been doing it up at Norwell while you're also driver training up there. And I think Flash Nash Morris was doing a similar sort of course, was he?
Yeah, so he's doing a full-time mechanical apprenticeship. So he actually pulled out of year 11 of school, I believe, year 11 of school, and did his apprenticeship full-time, where I continued mine through school, and I've actually put it on hold at the moment, and I'm just doing the driver training up at Norwell. So, it was awesome for me to gain that knowledge in those years that I was at school. And, every Friday I'd go to Dad's work, or eventually I ended up going to Norwell, and helping Richie on my Super 3 car was pretty cool. And now I've sort of slided into the driver training up at Norwell.
And with what you're doing at Norwell, working on your race car, how much did that assist you when you went to the racetrack and being able to translate that to your engineer?
Yeah, it definitely did help. I was just a 16-year-old kid back then. To be honest, I don't have the world's biggest interest in cars or know a heap about cars, but just any little thing that I could gain out of it or help the team. That's probably the biggest thing, was just, especially at the start, is getting to know the team. And by the end of the year, and still now, we're like a big family out there at Norwell. So, it was pretty awesome just to get to know everyone and help them out as much as I could. And any little thing that I could gain of knowledge certainly obviously helped me for that year. And, makes things a bit easier. And, they made sure when I was racing that Super 3 season, they explained everything that we were doing in the car, so I had a feeling or understood what I was actually doing, rather than just doing a change and saying it was faster or slower.
Yeah, for young guys or girls coming through, what sort of advice would you give in terms of learning as much technically about the car as you possibly can?
I suppose it depends, what your path is looking at. XL category is probably the biggest starter path, in probably Australian motorsport for a young kid or girl, boy or girl coming through at the moment. And I think the best thing about XLs is you basically go to the track with your mum and dad, and, some people might have mechanics, some might not, and you go race for the weekend, you work on it yourself. And, you get advice from, Norwell crew or people like us that are happy to help and stuff like that. So for me, I think the biggest thing that I've learned out of, understanding the car has probably been working on my XL. So we bought an XL first, and then we sold it, and me and my dad literally built an XL race car by ourselves, and with the help of some professionals, and it's probably one of the fastest cars in Australia at the moment. So just doing changes and understanding what you do in an XL is similar changes to what you do in a V8 supercar. So for me, it was working on that and understanding what changes do actually makes a very big difference.
Yeah, and what you've been part of at Norwell, moving on to that from a driver training perspective, while you're sort of moved up the ranks there fairly quickly, you've been heavily involved with a few kids that are transitioning from karts to cars. And I know that's a program that you're, I guess, running partially for Norwell out there, is the Karts to Cars program. How important has that driver training and working with Paul Morris personally, and then being able to work with others, been to your career?
Yeah, it has been awesome. Paul's been unreal with me. Back in 2018, when I first started, he literally came and picked me up from home and taught me how to drive a car, and that was only January in 2018. So it wasn't far ago. I've known Paul for a long time, so he's kept a close eye. I mean, as soon as we got into cars, we knew that was the place where we needed to go. So the knowledge that I've gained over the years, I'm so happy that I'm able to translate it into kids that were my age only a few years ago. So, it's been awesome. I absolutely love working out there. Never really a bad day when you're driving a race car. So, but, for me, really like helping, kids coming up through that are moving out of go-karts into cars, and met some great people through there. And, some people that I helped in karting when I was a little bit younger as well. I've been, fortunate enough to bring them up through Norwell, and such a great facility, and the things that you learn out there really makes you a fast race car driver.
Yeah, like the driver training thing, it's huge over in the UK and Europe. Everyone speaks about Rob Wilson and going to see him on the airstrip and what have you. In Australia, as I say, it's a relatively new thing, but Paul's really pioneered that, and I guess you were one of the very first, I guess, that have really gone out on the national stage with a bang, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it has been awesome. So those that first full year, and even up to now's date, Paul's just been helping me as much as he can with his driver training with me, and the whole crew out there. Robbo is like the head driver coach out there. Had heaps of lessons, or just during the day they'd say just jump in, we'll go for a few laps. So boosted my career so much, and certainly wouldn't be where I am without the amount of miles I've done, which has been so fortunate to be able to do it out there. So. That first year in the 86s certainly was booming. And it was awesome to, drive out there, and just any time you can spend on a track. So it's so hard racing cars and trying to spend time on a racetrack. It's so limited and it costs so much. So it's like the perfect opportunity to get as many laps in as you can.
Yeah, I hear back in those early days while you're in the mechanical shed out there that you're the dude's secret weapon when it came to the Friday afternoon shootouts.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. He'd normally pull me off the work floor and say, come on, we got a shootout out there. So, it was pretty cool. Everyone would be out there driver training and stuff like that. Then I'd rock up off the floor in the workshop and go out and lay a time on it. So it's pretty cool. Shane Van Gisbergen and some V8 boys would go out there. And, it's probably where I started becoming friends with a few of those guys. So, the shootouts are a bit of fun. Just puts a little bit of pressure on you. So once you get in the moment, feels a little bit easier.
Yeah, I hear that you might have shocked a certain SVG with the first time that he got to see you pounding around out there. And ironically, now you're his teammate at 888. You're all part of the 888 family. Yeah,
exactly. I still remember probably the first time that I met SVG out there. They were all mucking around, then we jumped in a shootout, and it was pretty fun. Very, very close at the end. I think we're only split by a couple of thousandths of a second, but just being able to associate with the guys out at Norwell. That's why I'm driving for 888, is because of the people that I met at Norwell, Roland Dane out there when we went and came to an XL meeting with me. It's the reason I got the drive. So, the people you meet out there is unreal.
Yeah, don't have too much longer left, but if we go back to Bathurst earlier on this year, walking in, there'd been a lot of talk about you moving across from Tickford to 888. You go out front row and then walk away with the race victory in your first Super 2 race of the year with 888. You could see the relief through the in-car camera. What was it like underneath the helmet?
Yeah, it is a big relief. I know how much effort I've put in myself, and not just me, everyone around me. So to go to a new team, represent Red Bull, Boost Mobile and Super Cheap Auto, and win the first race meant so much to me. And it's been a big journey. As I said, it's going back since when I was 3 years old that I started racing. So to win that race was unreal, and it just gives you that little extra motivation to go out and do it again. So that first taste of victory was very sweet, but definitely chasing the next one.
Yeah, the weekend after we actually record this, you're off to Winton for the second round. So hopefully that championship charge can continue on from there. And so one other thing from a young driver's perspective I wanted to touch on, which we haven't so far, is Boost Mobile. That's been a fairly interesting relationship since that first started. Talk us through where the Boost Mobile relationship started, and then we'll get to where it is now.
Yeah, so in 2019, when I was running the Super 3 series at Queensland Raceway, it was actually the weekend all the Kostecki boys had their boost stuff announced. Jason Haynes was up there, and Paul has a great relationship with him, Nathan Kaiser and all that group. So Jason came up and introduced himself to me and said, talking to Paul, and said, we'll do something with you. We'll sign you up to be a part of the Boost family. So it just happened so quick. He just basically came up. We had a quick chat, and obviously all came through Paul and Norwell and everything like that. And being involved with them has been awesome, and where it's taken me in such a short amount of time has been pretty crazy.
I think the lesson that is to come out of that initially the program was, here's a telephone, here's a cap, we're going to look after you from a phone perspective, and then it blossomed to the point where they've sponsored you properly. That's a fair assessment.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose that's the thing that you got to look at as a young kid. You take like any bit of support you can get from any single person, it can turn into something massive. And that's what happened with me and Boost. It, started little. I tried to treat them as best well as I could, and I think I've tried to achieve that. And it's turned into something massive. I ended up with a Bathurst 1000 drive basically within 18 months of being with them. So the opportunity that Pete and Jason from Boost gave me, absolutely out of this world, and it was a massive dream come true for me to line up on the grid for them.
Yeah, I think what you were and what you are is what these young guys coming through, young guys and girls, should be looking at on how you look after a sponsor. Like when they came on board, you and I catch up with each other quite a bit in the family and so on. From the time that they came on board, I never saw you without a Boost hat on your head, even at private family functions and so on. You always had the Boost cap on. It was the same at the racetrack. You were doing the right things on social media. You're engaging with them on social media as well. And Pete Adderton's obviously a guy that takes all of these things in, regardless of where he is in the world at a particular time, and recognise that. So I think, that's the way that you need to service a sponsor, is if someone comes in with something small, you never know where that something small is going to lead you.
Yeah, 100%. It's little things like just wearing a hat all the time, and that's what Pete wrote when he said when he gave me the drive. He called me up from the US and said, we can't, thank you enough for what you've done for us. You're always wearing your hat. Whenever you're doing an interview, you're always thanking Boost and all that. And it's just the real little things that count, especially for Pete, is being so supportive of me, and, just those tiny little things count. So, I try and represent them as best as I can. You always look at, for example, like Michael Schumacher and Niki Lauda, they've always got that, you picture them with that hat on, the red caps that they used to wear back in the day. And I'm just trying to basically replicate that with my Boost Mobile hat, just always wearing it and trying to get the brand out, because I know if they get sales, then it's going to help me in the future.
Yeah, I've converted over to Boost as a result. I've got a couple of other people that I've brought on board as well, and terrific product. But, it's a great point that you make there, that it's those small things. And it's not like, Broc, you were sort of seeking out anyone to tell you that that's what you should be doing. It's like you've done it off your own bat to say thank you to these guys. And as you say, it's become something synonymous with you, or will become something synonymous with you as the Schumacher and the Parmalat hat with Niki Lauda and so on back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to look after the people that are helping you out. Everyone knows that motorsport's very tough and costs a lot of money, and any little thing that you can get, you really got to thank the people that are doing it for you. So, to have those guys on board, and as I said, what it turned into a Bathurst 1000 drive, and they're supporting me this year, not only on my helmet, but my race car as well. It's awesome to be part of the Boost family. And, not only that, you feel like you are a part of the family with, such high credentialed people. It's very similar, product-based and family-based orientated as Red Bull is. There's this high-end level of athletes that Boost it with. And once you, sort of join them, you feel like you're part of this family.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's a pretty out there sort of dude, and on the odd occasion might make a fairly outlandish statement. But if you look at his business credentials, particularly with what he's achieved over in the United States, and a good essay on that is David Reynolds' podcast that he did a couple of weeks ago. That's actually up on KO. He and Michael Caruso had Pete Adderton in their studio for an hour and a half, and it was actually a sensational watch. And go and have a look into Pete Addison's history and what this guy's achieved and how he went about his business to build it. And, it's a pretty awesome Australian business story, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. Pete's done everything. You know what I mean? In motorsport and in the world in general of business. He's been very successful in business, but it's, so great for him to, really support the grassroots of racing. And, he sponsors quite a few in go-karts, some young kids. And, he's got Taylor Agus, the girl, Oscar Priest. He's got some, great young kids that he's looking after. And it just shows, with the sponsor like Boost Mobile, it's V8 supercars in Australia and it's go-karting in Australia. And he's got all the in-between. So for someone to help so many young kids and give them an opportunity like he did to me, I certainly can't thank him enough for what he's done for me. And, he's got me where I am today.
Yeah, cool. And so before we go, next weekend, obviously Winton, then it gets a little bit busier. Then, of course, the mountain, it awaits. What's the hope for the rest of the year and at Bathurst?
Yeah, it's an exciting year coming up. Obviously, only done the one round so far and we're second in the championship points. So definitely looking forward to getting back in the car again. The aim is definitely to try and go out and win this championship in the Super 2 this year. And then obviously leading into Bathurst is going to be quite exciting. So for me, just any miles I can get at the moment, especially in a supercar, is very vital. And I'm so excited to be lining up for my second time at the Bathurst 1000. It's pretty crazy. It'll be twice in a year, actually, because of the dates. But yeah, it's going to be awesome for me. Just an awesome opportunity. And it's sort of hard because you got to have Bathurst in the back of your mind because it's the time of year where you've got to really step up your physical training and everything. But then at the same time, it's just trying to focus on Winton. It's an exciting time of the year and looking forward to it.
Terrific, mate. Thank you for your time. It's been great to have you on the Motorsport Coaching Podcast. We'll be following on very closely and we wish you all the very best.
No worries. Thanks for having me, mate.
Our team here trust you enjoyed that chat with Broc Feeney. As we said in the intro, he's a young man moving very quickly. There were some great lessons to anyone really, but especially those coming through the early ranks of sport about looking after sponsors and building solid relationships. Until next time on the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, powered by Motivate Training, I'm Matt Payne and we'll catch you then.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's show. I really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Now, remember, all the show notes with the links and the specials mentioned in today's show are available over at motivatetraining.com.au. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could head to iTunes or Stitcher, type in Motorsport Coaching, subscribe, and leave us a review. Each week, I'll read them out and you'll go into a monthly draw to win a fantastic prize. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at motivatetraining.com.au or head over to our Facebook page at Motivate T. Until next time, take care.